All right. Hello, everybody. We're waiting for some people to kick in here, and we're going to get this thing started. Let me get my screen and everything ready to go. There. How is that for size on your screen, Rich?
I think it looks good.
All right. A little bit bigger.
There he is.
Hey,
All right. Hey, Darrell, how are you, sir?
hey, how you doing today?
Doing well.
I just
All
had to
right.
keep at it. You know,
That's
Marines, we
right.
never give up.
That's just like it. I love it. All right. I'm just still trying to get my screen moved around. I swear, if my desk was 8 feet wide, I would still have a cluttered desk. And I think my desktop is kind of the same way. All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 77th edition of Franchising 101. I'm Jimmy Weeks, your host, and I'm joined by Rich Henderson and Darrell Early from Jani-King. And we're going to get started with Franchising 101, which is getting into business for yourself, but not by yourself. And if you think that I have the voice for radio, it is more because I'm getting over COVID than anything else. But I am enjoying my beautiful, booming, deep voice while I can. So what I'd like to do today is introduce our co-panelists. Between the three of us, we've got at least over 7 decades of franchising experience. And again, I'm Jimmy Weeks. I'm moderating the panel. I was in the Air Force for 12 and a half years. When I got out of the Air Force, I started a digital marketing agency, and I got into franchising about 18 years ago. And shortly after I got into franchising, started doing a lot of work with the IFA and with VetFran, and we'll get into what VetFran is in a moment. I've really enjoyed working within franchising. And if I would have known when I got out of the Air Force how amazing the opportunities are in franchising, I would have never started a digital marketing company and gone through all of those things required to start a business on my own. So with that, I'd like to introduce Rich Henderson, a regional franchisor for Jani-King and a U.S. Navy veteran, as well as Darrell Early, franchise owner for Jani-King for 30 years. Is that right, Darrell?
It'll be 30 years in June.
All right, congrats. And Darrell's a USMC veteran. So next, what I'd like to do is Darrell, give us a little bit of quick background about yourself and what you did in the military and how you transitioned into. I'm guessing you've been with Jani-King long enough to figure out that this has been a good move, but why don't you give us a little bit of background info?
Yeah, born and raised in Memphis, Tennessee, graduated high school, went off to the Marine Corps, Paris Island, hoorah. Did 6 years, was a veteran of Desert Storm. Spent my last year in Camp Fuji, Japan. Got out and was looking for. I knew I wanted a business, and I actually lucked into Jani-King, and it's been 30 years of the best decision I could have made.
Wonderful. And what was your favorite place moving around in the military? I mean, sometimes it's kind of tough to have a favorite place, but where would you say was your favorite place in the military?
I would say training in California was kind of fun. The weekends off, we had a lot to do. I was there doing spring break in Palm Beach, so
All right.
But I enjoyed my time overseas in Japan and Okinawa.
Okay.
So look, being in Desert Storm wasn't the best thing, but we had some good times over there as well. So everywhere I went, I had some fun. I enjoyed the experience.
All right. What years were you in during Desert Storm?
Desert Storm, I was there, was it 90? Yeah,
Yeah.
1990. Yeah, we
Okay.
was there. I was communications. So we were the
Okay.
first one to get there and the last ones to leave.
All right. That's always the way it is, isn't it? All right.
Always.
Well, awesome. All right. So next up, we want to go through the goals for today's session. We want to introduce VetFran. We want to provide an overview of franchising for everybody today. Want to discuss the benefits and some of the challenges in franchising and explain why franchising is a great fit for us veterans, and then show what to look for when considering investing in a franchise. And we're also going to provide some resources and some tools. There's three paths to entrepreneurship. You can either build a business from scratch, which I did. You can buy an existing business, which could be a franchise, and you can borrow a proven concept, which is franchising. And Rich, do you want to take this slide about what is franchising?
Yeah, well, franchising in its simplest term is it's a preset business model that someone has, to Jimmy's point, someone has done all the legwork and taken the time to build the concept and get all the kinks out, get things moving in the right direction. So you'd be surprised. You've probably been in and out of franchises and didn't even know it. There's so many franchise models across the United States, 120 industries, 300 business lines, 3,000 concepts. It's amazing. All of the brands that someone started with an idea, put in that effort and that built from the ground up, got all those kinks out, and then started sharing or loaning. You said borrow the idea, not loaning the idea, but sharing that idea with entrepreneurs to help them reach their goals faster. And so we have the numbers here: 3,000 unique franchise systems, 1,200 IFA franchise members, and of those are 600 plus VetFran members.
Wonderful. And kind of talk about the little bit of a disparity we had from one slide to the next. Well, I think we're pushing nearly 4,000 different franchise concepts. But the International Franchise Association is the governing body for franchise. And while you can be in franchising and have a franchise disclosure document and be, legal with the Federal Trade Commission to be in franchising, the IFA's governing body also has its own membership. So when you're looking for franchises, the IFA has 1,200 plus members, and then within that subset, VetFran is another. It's a nonprofit offshoot of the IFA, and VetFran was founded in 1991 and in a strategic initiative of the IFA and the IFA Foundation. And we basically have two missions. One is to educate veterans about the unique match skills between and aptitude between veterans and the demands and opportunities of franchising. And the second one is to facilitate the transition of veterans into franchising by encouraging franchise brands like Jani-King to offer special discounts and incentives to veterans. Rich, can you talk a little bit about what Jani-King is doing in terms of your veteran initiatives and task force and opportunities?
So Jani-King's an international company, and so just talking about the regional locations in the continental U.S. Across the continental U.S., we've got I believe 87 regional locations, and you can the primary thing that you would see from a Jani-King franchise company is the discounts up front, and the initial investment. Jimmy's going to go into that. there's an initial investment when starting a franchise, and in many brands like Jani-King offer discounts. Depending on what region you're in, you can receive as much as a 25% to up to as much as a 50% discount in your franchise initial investment. And it's a significant investment when you're looking at franchises. You know, if the average investment for us is $10, $20, $30,000, I mean, you can imagine a $30,000 investment cut in half. That's great. That's working capital. That's opportunity. And then in addition to that, Jani-King offers in-house financing with very aggressive terms to help the balance of that, and help with the balance of that. So you throw that in with the initial training and the ground support and the operational support to help you get off the ground. It's almost like going to a C school to learn your craft and then be helped along before you get out into the fleet.
Wonderful. That's great. Darrell, why don't you take a shot at all the different types of franchising concepts and different options for franchising?
I mean, as I was looking at it, I didn't even realize it was that many different franchises that you could invest in. I would say a little plug for us, Rich. I think Jani-King is the best investment that you can make to become a franchisee.
Yeah.
Just based on all the values and morals that you have coming. If you take those same characteristics and invest that into your business, there's no way you can fail.
No, very true. Yeah, there's, you know, you go around today and you drive by any little, you know, mini mall, and it's just layered with all the different types of franchise concepts, you know, and even going on base, and you will see UPS stores, you'll see Burger Kings and things like that. And there's even kiosk franchise systems, and there's home-based non-territory franchise systems. And we see a lot of veterans really get interested in some of these home franchise concepts. And a lot of times military spouses overseas will start a small franchise system that is possibly an online business, and the military spouse will champion that. They'll return from overseas, and wherever they end up being stationed, it's still a viable side hustle that could then be turned into, you know, a full-time business for both team members, both spouse members. So there's a lot of different concepts that are out there, and we're going to talk a little bit about what we call like risk tolerance. You know, if you know you're getting out of the military and you've got enough money socked away, you know, do you want to spend money to buy a Lamborghini or maybe a Lincoln Continental, or is your risk tolerance something more in the lines of a Hyundai, a used Hyundai, which there's nothing wrong with starting small, and we're going to talk about the risk tolerance in a little bit as well. Gonna run through some of these. I'm not going to touch on every one of them, but franchising has been around for a very, very long time. Ben Franklin was one of the very first, as our founding father, one of the very first implementers of a franchise modeling system, where he used some of his printing equipment and was using it for people to start their own business, but it was his equipment and they used his model. Burger King, those founders did some stints in the Army. H&R Block, Henry flew 32 combat missions in a B-17, and getting to 32 missions, everybody knows, is just an incredible feat in and of itself. They have over 8,700 locations today in the U.S. Conrad Hilton served 2 years in the Army during World War I after attending OTS. Sonic, I didn't realize this until somebody had done the research. The Sonic brand is, started out with their slogan in 1959 is service with the speed of sound. And that's kind of a neat play on a military term. And that's been their mainstay. They have 3,600 locations in 42 states. Colonel Sanders was actually a private, and he came in when he was 16, underage, and he was summarily discharged. But Colonel Sanders didn't even start franchising until he was 62 years old. So it kind of goes to show that those 11 herbs and spices stuck with him for quite a long time before he was ready to jump into franchising. Friendlies served some time in the Army during World War II. So we're going to talk a little bit about why consider franchising. And Darrell, talk about that. Well, tell you what, Rich is the franchisor-ish. Talk about why you should consider franchising.
Well, I think it goes back to that initial statement. It's going into business for yourself, but not by yourself. And what is your risk tolerance? What is your financial capacity? What are your goals? What are you interested in? All those things are questions that need to be answered in the initial phases of this step. But look at what the military's prepared you for, and first and foremost, your team leaders, your experts in executing a standard, managers, your tenacious hard workers. Darrell had a hard time getting on this call, but he didn't give up. The Marine spirit. And I think we see that a lot where in business has a way. We have a saying with some of our corporate team here that everybody has a plan till you get punched in the face. And business has a way of doing that. That you feel like everything's going great, and then something you didn't expect happens. For example, I'm in Augusta, Georgia. We had a hurricane come through here. We're 250 miles from the coast. We had no idea a hurricane would come in. We didn't expect that. We were without gas, without power, without internet, with all these things we didn't expect. There are just so many things. But having a franchisor that's there to kind of be somewhat of a safety net, but not just a safety net, but maybe a go-to person where you could pick up the phone and say, hey, this is new to me. What's the best practices in this situation? And so I've always tried to advise our franchises is that I can't prevent you from making mistakes, but maybe I can minimize the damage of those mistakes from the experience that we have and that other franchisees have gone through. And as a result, I'm very proud to say that I've worked with franchisees in my 30-year career, worked with franchisees who've owned franchises for 10, 15, 20, 30 years, and have seen it as their career, their livelihood, the way that they take care of their families. You're on mute, Jimmy. Jimmy, you're on mute.
Oh man, that was a nugget. I'm sorry nobody heard that. That's horrible. I feel bad. When I was, I sit in on a lot of transition assistance program briefings, and we talk about. One of the things I do is I tell everybody, all right, if you were able to pick every place you were stationed, raise your hand. And if you were able to pick your bosses when you were in the military, raise your hand. And if you were in the Marines and you were ever given a piece of equipment that didn't work, raise your hand. And nobody ever raises their hand. So if you think about that, the grit and determination of having to move from your where you grew up, move away from your friends, move away from your family, get stationed somewhere you probably don't want to go, get a boss you probably don't want to have, get equipment that's crud, all of that, and you still end up getting the mission done. That is grit and integrity and power that you have far and above beyond somebody that went to college and, you know, was entering the job force around the same time as you. You have that determination and grit and tenacity to basically complete the mission. And in franchising, you're given a playbook. How many franchise locations do you guys have, Rich?
Jani-King Worldwide has about 8,000 unit franchises. Our operation supports 250 of those unit franchises in 7 states.
Okay. So 8,000, they have gone through this launch, 90-day launch or whatever it takes to start a Jani-King business. They've done it 8,000 times. And if you think about that, they're not still trying to figure things out. It's been figured out for a very, very long time. And we're going to talk a little bit about my very, very good friend Ron had these conversation about guardrails, and we're going to talk a little bit about guardrails in just a moment. Let's go to veterans in franchising. So IFA research indicates that there's about 7% of the US population are veterans, but 14% of the franchise owners nationwide are veterans. So it really says a lot about how franchising is such a great fit for veterans. Veteran franchise owners hire more veterans and more military spouse, 30% more than non-veteran franchisees. So you can just see how this cyclical nature of franchise owners that are veterans owning businesses, empowering more veterans and helping more veteran communities and families grow. It's really an amazing thing. And we see these numbers, you know, over and over and year over year. And that's why every franchise brand wants to support veterans. They know it's a very selfish thing, and that's fine. They know veterans are going to do better work. They're going to hire more veterans. It's going to be great for the community, great for the brand. It's just a really interesting, we're all in a wonderful, wonderful place in franchising. Some of the advantages to franchising, you know, when I got my business, I had to do patent research to make sure that my logo and trademark and stuff was done. You know, you got the ability to use valuable trademark name and trademark information, reduced risk of failure. Want to talk a tiny bit about reduced risk. Rich, you kind of alluded to it. You know, during COVID, it was a very unfortunate time. A lot of mom and pop multiple generation businesses went down. The biggest word in 2020 in franchising was pivot. It was being able to take the group of people that you have. You know, when you're in a franchise system, you have this incredible buying power. There are vendors that support franchise businesses, and, you know, restaurants that had never done takeout started doing takeout, and people that had never done online ordering started doing online ordering. And so we need takeout supplies. We need to upgrade our online ordering system. And if you don't have the power of a system behind you and that infrastructure to go to your vendors and say, hey, here's where we need help for all of our franchise locations, you know, that reduced risk of failure, because you're in a community, and within franchising, that's a really powerful ally. Management training provided by the franchisor, immediate supply lines, just kind of talked about that, immediate supply lines. It's kind of interesting, you know, we talk about an exit strategy, and you're like, hey, wait, I'm just trying to get started. Why are we talking about exit strategy? But it's really important to think about where you want to be in 10 years when your franchise license agreement is up. It's always good to know what your exit strategy is going to be. You have obviously access to a proven business plan and an operating plan, and then you've got a cooperative franchisee community. Within the franchise brand, there's a franchisee community, but within that, many brands have a veteran task force that's another subset of the franchise brand. Rich, you want to talk through some franchising challenges? It's not all fun and games, right?
Well, that's right. And, I thought it was interesting you used the car analogy because I always tell people we can give you the vehicle, but you've got to physically get in it and drive it. You've got to take charge of getting from point A to point B. And so you have to understand that there are, in a franchise, there are parameters, there are rules and regulations, there are policies that are there to protect the brand. And so you're not completely independent. And you have to understand that you work through that. There are fees. There obviously you're using someone else's idea and planning and setup, and so you have to pay for those things. Franchises performing poorly do not represent the brand well, and so that puts you those particular franchisees could damage the brand name across the area. There is a franchise agreement. It does have a term. So at the end of that term, in our case, ours automatically renews. Well, I say automatically. It renews at no cost. It doesn't automatically. It renews at no cost. But there is an application system for that renewal, and all franchise companies do that. And then there may be some limitation on expansion or what have you. And so, that being said, if those are the worst things, I think you're doing pretty good.
All right, shopping for a franchise. My friend Ron used to say, when you're looking for a franchise, you've got to be cognizant of guardrails. So if you like to swim and you say, you know what, I want a business and I want to do you go to the city pool and swim there and get a membership, or are you somebody that likes to swim naked? And if you want to swim naked, you're probably better off getting your own pool. And franchising it may not be the best analogy, but it makes sense, right? If you've got something that you think is amazing and it's something that nobody else has, then maybe entrepreneurship and starting your own business works for you. But if it's a model that is out there, then you've got to ask yourself, is this something I could walk into and follow a system? There's a lot of things when you talk about your investment that you need to be understanding of. We had another franchisee that was on a Zoom a while back, and they could afford a measurable footprint for a franchise, and they ended up picking a lower cost franchise system. And what that did is it left him a little bit of extra money. So he had a lower risk tolerance. Even though he had the money to buy a bigger concept, he got a smaller concept, and he's ended up over time, he ended up investing in real estate, ended up buying an RV, and either an RV park or RV storage. And he ended up making more money in some of these other venues, and then ended up coming back and buying multiple locations over time. So it's not putting all of your eggs in one basket and starting out, smaller and manageable, and then growing over time. Because there's nothing wrong with expanding a territory and adding multiple locations to it. But starting out too big sometimes can be, don't shoot for the fences on your first investment opportunity. Darrell, why don't you talk a little bit about how selecting a franchise and how you kind of started out with your process on how to select a franchise?
Yeah, well, like I said, I lucked into Jani-King. I was looking for something to start. I was looking for a job, to be honest,
Okay.
and came out the unemployment office, and I saw the Jani-King sign. And I was like, I had seen this before in the newspaper, so let me go over here and talk to them and see exactly, because coming from the military, of course, we all know you have field day on Thursdays in preparation for Friday morning inspection. So I was like, okay, I know how to clean. I know how to strip and wax floors, and
Yeah.
let's go give it a try. So going into the cleaning service was almost a no-brainer for me because I was looking at it as, I know how to clean.
Mhm.
Everything that the business model had was pretty much the same as being in the military.
Interesting.
You got your ranks, you got your policies and procedures. You have to train. So I would tell anybody, get into something that you're passionate about. And I wasn't necessarily passionate about cleaning, but I
Yeah,
know I could do it. And
yeah,
once I got in there, learning all the other aspects of cleaning, carpet cleaning, window cleaning, and everything else, it just became a perfect fit for me. Now, I came in 1995, so Rich, I'm sure you remember that it was back then. I think the model was a low cost investment, and I'm sure it's increased over the years. But it was easy for me coming in with low costs and
yeah.
all the support that you get from the corporate office and the franchisors and all of that. Could I have started my own business myself, cleaning service? Probably so,
Yeah.
but going through a franchise made it extremely easier than trying to do it on my own.
Sense.
And the growth opportunity is there. It you can make it as big as you want it to be.
Mhm. Very good. Rich, any comments to add?
Well, just knowing intimately what Darrell's talking about, thinking. I think it's important for someone who may be on this webinar who's going through this thought process is to take what Darrell just said. He really just went through the 4, or at least the top 3 steps in that conversation. He thought to himself, could I do this? Well, yeah. I mean, I cleaned in the military. I mean, surely I can do that in the civilian sector. The investment level at the time we were promoting, we were considered one of the top low investment franchises, and so the initial investment at that time was extremely reasonable. And then what opportunities were there for growth? In our particular model, in some models, and this is a consideration, some models. I mean, obviously, you can't put a McDonald's next to a McDonald's. You have to have a specific region, or if you're running a Snap-on Tools, you probably have an area that's specific to that, or you might have an entire market. And then your opportunity is that opportunity. It's just that opportunity. And with our particular franchise, the 2 things you look at is that we don't restrict your growth, but we don't put you on a kind of a growth program. What you can handle, what's good for you is out there, but you can grow. You can pretty much name your growth opportunity in that particular franchise model. And Darrell, you didn't talk about your future exit plan. I don't know if I want to hear that, but I'm open to that.
Well, Rich, 30 years in, I'm thinking about an exit plan now.
All right.
We just had a seminar about that at our annual banquet where we talked about legacy planning
Mhm.
and letting people know that, as far as a franchise is concerned, you build equity into your franchise, and one way to exit is to sell.
Yeah.
So you could pass that on to another veteran.
Mhm.
We talked about starting your own, buying one, or investing in one. So
Yeah.
part of your exit strategy could be passing that along to a family or passing that
Yeah.
along to another veteran.
Yeah.
Nice.
And I think over, the last several decades, um, there's a lot fewer from an exit plan. There's a lot fewer legacy transfers that are happening. Do you kind of see that too, Rich? There's, a lot, 30 years ago, kids would many times grow up to take over, a family business. And I think times have changed a little bit where there's not as many legacy, situations out there where young kids nowadays are thinking about coming in and working in the business. So having that legacy or that exit plan very early on, I think, is a really important thing to have.
Yeah, and there's something to be said about the value of the business, that where someone's looking at an exit plan. You know, these franchises carry their value very well, and a well-run franchise can ask for top dollar once the owner does decide to exit out.
Very good. Yeah. And when you're evaluating a franchise, look, if you're gonna go get a car for your spouse or your kids, you're going to make sure that it's looked at by a mechanic. You're going to want to make sure that there's a good warranty for it if possible. If you're buying a house, you make sure that you've got contractors signing off, notaries signing off. You need to make sure that everything there is sound. When you're buying a business, you have those same requirements where you need to do your due diligence, and you want to make sure that you're comparing multiple brands, and you want to make sure you retain a franchise attorney. A franchise attorney is going to be able to look at all of the paperwork and help you understand what is going on with that franchise, and not just a regular attorney, but a specific franchise attorney. We're going to get into, there's a document called the franchise disclosure document. So almost 4,000 franchise brands have a franchise disclosure document. Every franchise disclosure document in existence has 23 items, and each item is the same. So you go to item 5 or 6 on any franchise document, it's going to be the same thing. So we're going to talk about 4 or 5 of those items now. And one of them is items 5, 6, and 7. That's basically your initial fee, any other fees, and an estimated initial investment. And then, this tells you what all the costs are, what needs to be paid in connection with your startup, including, equipment to run your business, what cash you need to have on hand, what your runway needs to be until you're operational, and things like that. One of the other items is our outlets and franchisee information. There's a very important metric that you need to understand, like how many units have been opened, added, terminated, not renewed, or transferred and sold, like Darrell is getting ready to sell his concept to Rich. And one of the really important metrics within franchising is the number of expansions that happen. So when you're looking at a franchise concept and 20% of the franchise owners are expanding their franchise by buying more territory, that is the biggest signal of a healthy organization, is how much growth is happening within the brand. Obviously, understanding how many locations are sold but not open. That's another really big indicator. So these are all questions that are already listed in the franchise disclosure document. So this gives you a little bit of an idea about the health of the brand. And then adding to that is the financial performance representation. So not every brand has an item 19 or a performance representation, but this is basically every aspect of financial information that a prospective franchisee might request or a franchisor provides during the sales process. And if you are talking to a brand and looking at the franchise disclosure document and they don't have an item 19, but they are giving you financial performance, that is a big red flag, and it is illegal. It is all highly regulated by the franchise or the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, sorry. Every F word starts, I usually say franchise, but it is the Federal Trade Commission. So the bottom line is you're starting to see that there is a playbook that you can go look at better than any other business concept, you can get to the nuts and bolts of a franchise business and opportunity and see what's going on. One of the last items are financial statements, and this gives you the ability to look at the Federal Trade Commission's audits of a franchise for the last 3 years, and this shows their financial strength. You can also see if there's any pending litigation about the franchise in that item 21 as well. Now, when you're selecting a franchise, this is kind of a little bit about risk tolerance, and this is an Excel spreadsheet type thing. This makes my wife shut down, but I live and love and breathe with these kind of charts. And this is something, if you're looking at a business concept, this is something you're going to want to do. And each one of these brands are actual franchise brands. And brand one is a non-territory home-based business. You notice it doesn't have a financial performance. It doesn't have an item 19, but you know how much the fees are and what the estimated investment range is to start. And then your investment break-even point down at the very bottom is unknown because you don't have a financial performance. And that's because this brand, it's home-based and it's travel. So sometimes people will buy a travel franchise as a side hustle. So the financial performance is so ranging differently that they don't have it listed. Brand two is a non-brick and mortar territory-based service franchise. So you can see what the initial fee is, you can see what the investment range is, and then they have an item 19. So it's a $450,000 average unit volume after X amount of time, whether it's 2 years or 5 years. And then you can see their continuity. They've grown 5%, 3%, and 12% consecutively over the last 3 years. And then you can see there's an investment break-even point. So if you invest $250,000, you can expect to earn that money back. Your break-even for your investment in 2.5 years. So if you're looking for something to give you a risk tolerance, is 2.5-year investment worth that investment for that break-even point. Now, the other one is a retail brick and mortar concept. Now, it has a $1.2 million average unit volume, but you could have to spend upwards of $1 million of investment. That's a pretty, you need to have a very high risk tolerance. You probably need to have a portfolio of other businesses to support that. And the investment break-even point is over 5 years. So those are 3 really solid ranges. Now, those are different franchise concepts. So now let's say you decide, okay, I want to be in a type 2 risk tolerance. So I want a home-based business that is territory-based where I have maybe $250,000 investment. And if that is your risk tolerance, then you need to go, the recommendation is take another spreadsheet like this and find 3 brands that are within that same industry. So if you, what are 2 competitors to Jani-King in your guys' mind?
There are quite a few,
Sure.
but there are other cleaning franchise companies,
Okay.
name brands, Office Pride, Coverall, I draw a blank.
Okay, good enough.
But I didn't spend a lot of time thinking about them.
You bet. So now that you have figured out kind of what you're interested in doing, now you want to look at and say, what are the fees and what's the financial performance comparing Jani-King? What's Jani-King's continuity rating compared to the other brands? And what is my break-even point for those other brands? And you'll start to see what the winners are. And then when you're able to, Darrell, I know it's been a long time, but when you selected your franchise, were you able to reach out to other franchise owners that were in the brand to ask them what they feel about their franchise concept?
Yes, that was all. It was a prerequisite for us. We had to. They
Awesome.
gave us a list of all the franchise owners, and we just we could randomly pick through the numbers whichever one, So, of course, you get some that might not be as happy as others.
Sure.
But for the most part, the best advice I got was, hey, whatever you make out of it is what it is. So I just took that concept and ran with it, and that was pretty much the message when someone called me asking them, say, you can make it whatever you want to make it. So yes, we did.
Yeah,
Interesting.
and Jimmy, on that point, I mean, one of the items that's listed is the list of active franchise, actually active and former franchises for the last calendar year. And so yes, everyone is available to be talked to. But I wanted to go back to your comment about the competition. If you're looking into a franchise and you drill down on a brand or a model that you're interested in, whether it be, say it's a lawn service or commercial cleaning like us, or some type of model, if there are competing models or brands in a market, you should go meet with all of them. You should absolutely go meet with all of them, and not from a standpoint of the brand. Definitely the brands and how they're structured. You should compare them, the fee structure and all those things. But the local presence has a bit to do with it too. You're not partners, but you are in the partnering business. We all have the same goal in mind, which is to get you to where you want to go. And so if you're going to go into business with a brand and there's a local group there, there's got to be a connection with that too. And so I highly encourage you to visit all the brands that represent the type of franchise you're interested in going into.
That's a really good point, because you'd really start to get a flavor for that industry and seeing how different franchise concepts kind of treat that same client base.
Right.
That's a really good point. That makes a lot of sense. All right, questions to ask before buying a franchise. And I'm going to have you guys just take this after this one. Darrell, you said you had talked to franchise owners. Sometimes you'll talk to a franchise owner that is unhappy, and brands will give you names of franchise owners that have exited the system. And it's a really good thing to ask them why they exited the system, because sometimes it has nothing to do with the brand, but it has to do with the franchise owner and, family issues or anything of that nature. So it is always good to ask the franchise owners that have exited the system and get the input and feedback from them. If you guys want to talk about some of these other questions to ask before buying a franchise, that'd be great.
Well, I'll go ahead and jump in. These are great questions. And then obviously being upfront with the franchisor on what your goals are. Jimmy had mentioned earlier about working I think you called it a side hustle. There are brands that give you the opportunity to run your business part-time. There are other brands that require your full-time commitment and full on-site commitment. And so what are your goals as it relates to that commitment and time? And then we talked about the support from the local office and what are some of the things, how much time, what's the overhead cost? What's the cost of the industry, and what does it take to do all these things? So those are all really, really good questions to ask.
Wonderful. The keys to franchise success, it's the same with any business. you want to follow a system, follow what, Darrell had alluded to. I've got a system, I've got a punch list. These are the things that I need to do. Be willing to work within your system and reach out to people that are in your system. There's going to be franchise owners that you're going to look to as mentors, and when Rich and Darrell have been in for so long, they end up becoming the mentors in the system, getting and staying involved within the community, all very important topics and information. We're gonna kind of close with some tools and resources. Anybody that wants this session, we will email you this list with these links. If you are interested in business ownership, whether it's franchising or not, the most important asset I can recommend is find your small business development center and go online and look at that. They provide free counseling, training to small businesses. I have used my SBDC office to work with pro formas, get financial information done, get help with marketing. I was able to go into my SBDC and they helped me curate and create a list through City Hall of franchise brands that were in my area that also did e-commerce, because our software does a lot of work with e-commerce revenue. And they were able to give me that list. I was able to create a marketing plan to go out and reach them. The amount of work that they can do for you at no cost is amazing. So highly recommend that. I think that's pretty much everything for today. I want to open. Everybody that's on this call went to vetfran.org. So I'm hoping now that there's some more information that's on the vetfran.org website that might make sense to you. What I would also highly encourage is if you go on vetfran.org and you have any questions, I'd encourage you to go to the contact form and fill out some information on the contact form, and somebody from our committee and from VetFran can reach out and help you. I don't see any questions posted. Darrell, Rich, do you guys have any closing comments?
I do. I don't want to leave this without making this statement. In over 30 years, I have been in franchise development in 18 different metropolitan areas for this company. And on average, only half of the people that show interest in the franchise ever even show up to get a copy of the federal disclosure document. And then of that, there's a percentage of those people that actually make a decision to move forward in opening up their franchise. My concern is the people that don't come. And I want to express that all franchise companies are required by the Federal Trade Commission to deliver that federal disclosure document with no obligation. There's no cost to the meeting. Outside of, there may be some brands where you may have to travel to another city to receive it. That's cost, but there is no obligation to buy on the spot. As a matter of fact, there actually is an obligation of a waiting period. The Federal Trade Commission requires there's a 14 calendar day waiting period once you receive the document before you can sign a franchise agreement. And so if you I tell everyone, if you think you're interested in starting your own business and you think franchising is an opportunity for you, the very least you should do is invest an hour to 2 hours of your time to go sit down with that franchise company and receive a copy of this federal disclosure document, the very least. And if you walk away and you say, you know what, that just wasn't for me, at least you can look yourself in the mirror and say, I gave it a serious thought.
Yeah.
But if you talk yourself into not going because you're concerned that you may be coerced into buying something you're not ready to do, franchising cannot do that.
Correct.
And so I just encourage everyone, take that first step or maybe it's a second step. Maybe it's a third step. But get to that point, go visit the company, get your federal disclosure document, and then make a decision if it's yes or no.
Very good. Darrell, any closing thoughts, sir?
Well, the thing I want to add to what Rich said is simple. If you debating between cleaning services, just remember, Jani-King, we're not the best because we're the biggest. We're the biggest because we're the best.
Love it. Awesome. Well, thank you guys very much. And everybody, thank you very much for attending. And I don't see any open questions. So everybody have a great day, and we'll get a copy of this webinar to you. Thank you guys very much for attending, and we will see you all soon.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Okay, take care.